Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 252, and we're going to talk about who protects the worker. So I was listening to a bunch of Jimmy Dore podcasts, and sometimes Jimmy Dore is the one that's running the podcast, and sometimes he has a couple of guests to come substitute for him, I guess because he's doing something else. But he wants to continue to have episodes uploaded, so he invites, I guess, some friends that he has to host, talk about certain topics in place of him. But one topic that always comes up, pretty much in a lot of the episodes, are issues. They champion the worker, right? They're saying, "Oh, so and so is forgetting the worker, or they're ignoring the worker, or they've forgotten the worker, whatever." Now, that kind of attitude that they have, it's a very socialistic kind of thing. And before you misunderstand, I'm pro-worker because I'm a worker, right? So anyone who has a job, you are a worker, right? And so to champion workers, you have to think about all workers, right? Otherwise, you're just being partisan. You're going to be biased. You're going to be prejudicial. You're going to favor one system over another because you're thinking about particular workers. But if you're thinking about all workers, right? Because think about it, even if I become the principal of a school, and so now I'm an administrator, well, I'm still a worker, right? I'm still working. Um, Especially in a school, you work under a school board, right? So you're serving other people, you're serving the community, you're serving the students, whatever. And so you are a worker. Your titles may be different, but you're still a worker. So listening to this, and I was thinking, what would be great is Friedman's Free to Choose, Chapter 8, Who Protects the Worker. So I'm just going to share some ideas. I did a summary on it 8 years ago or so. And so I'm just going to pick out some ideas and just talk about it. So it's not paternalism that protects the worker, right? Oh, we got to do something to protect the worker. The government has to do something to protect the worker. The union has to do something to protect the worker. No, that's paternalism, right? It's as if the worker is powerless to control their own life, right? Like freedom wouldn't be the solution to all of these issues. And that's what's so annoying about a lot of the socialistic mindset. It's right. These educators or these commentators, in this case, people who are hosting this podcast, they're the superior intellect. They're going to tell all the workers what they need to be able to survive and what's fair and what's not fair, right? You need them to tell you because you can't figure it out on your own, right? You're too much of an idiot to figure out what's a better job than something else, right? And that kind of paternalism always irks me. It bothers me, right? So what we need, though, is more freedom, freedom to be able to choose a better job if we want. So most people think that in order for a worker to be protected, you need a lot of regulations in place. You need, all these regulations to prevent employers from taking advantage of their workers. But no, it's none of that. It's competition for labor, competition for labor. You need multiple companies, many, many different businesses, right? They don't even have to be the same business, right? It's just many, many different businesses looking for better workers, right? They're fighting for the best workers. And you can have that kind of competition for labor in the free market. And it's that competition which best protects the interests of all workers, not just auto workers or construction workers or steam fitters union workers. No, all workers, right? It allows people to change their jobs, right? So I used to be a steam fitter, now I'm a teacher. I used to be a teacher, now I'm an engineer. Whatever. You want people to be able to switch out jobs as frequently and as often as the person wants, right? Remember, you can also be trapped by your union. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, but like police unions, for example. Like I knew someone, I said, "Oh, why don't you apply to this job for this police force?" because it's a lot quieter here. It's safer. It'll probably be great for your family, blah, blah, blah. And he said, no, I can't because I put too many years in for my other union. And so if I start over at another police force, right, I lose all those years I put in already. See, you're trapped. And I've had also students who told me that their parent had great insurance through their union, and they had a relative, an uncle, who wasn't part of a union, and so therefore had crappy health care. And I said, but see, look, your dad is trapped at that job. As long as he wants that healthcare, he has to stay at that job, right? Even if he wanted to find a different job, he's bored or something pays more, he's trapped because he wants that healthcare, you see. And so it's not all plus, right? There are downsides to it, right? And so we run into the problem of unions and monopolies because it's a government protected system, right? Because the market is somehow skewed now because of regulations, there can only be one company that exists that are able to function under all of those rules, and therefore it becomes a monopoly. So all monopolies are government protected monopolies. That's the only way you can have a monopoly. And when you are a monopoly, you become the sole employer of a certain kind of worker. And so, of course, they're going to unionize too. And so the only kind of corporate entity that can become a union is a government protected one. They're protected by all the regulations, by tariffs, by whatever, protectionism stuff, attitudes. And then the workers for that company, they in turn become protected. And on top of that, they unionize. And so their labor now is protected as well. And so they become a monopoly on labor. So unions function kind of as monopolies on skills and labor, a lot like guilds used to function a long time ago. And if you remember in the Middle Ages, if you were a skilled worker, that information that you had was a secret, right? You can't let other people know how to build a castle. You can't let other people know how to put a horseshoes on horses, because then you'd have other people doing the same job competing with you for work, which means you can't charge as much as you could. And so unions function as labor monopolies, right? You can only hire us. We're the best too. And so you can't hire non-union laborers. You can't trust their work. Their work is not that good in quality. Right? And plus they work for less, right? And so you have all of these issues, right? And so monopolies discourage people from hiring non-union labor, right? And so it's protection for them. Um, Unions also seek to protect its own members against other laborers, right? So you see, even unions don't protect all workers, just its members. But once they receive all the protections that they wanted, excuse me, job security, then the incentive to work harder at peak productivity is gone, right? Because you can't be fired that way, right? You can't be fired for missing many days of work. You can't be fired because you fell asleep at your job or whatever, right? You're protected. And so the incentive to do your best all the time is gone. It's just not there. Now, some people will work hard no matter what, but there's always the hours that you work, right? You can't exceed a certain number of hours, right? And so it's a set time, and there's not a lot of investment on the tools and the equipment that you use. And so therefore your productivity or the speed at which you work never really changes. If anything, it slows down, right? This is why highways take so long to be constructed. This is why buildings take so long to be constructed, right? Because they drag their feet. There's no incentive to work harder. So this kind of activity is counterproductive, and it also prevents employers from exercising their freedom to hire and fire whoever they wanted. Unions protect their workers against being fired. They also protect union workers against other people who will be hired, right? And so this means that other people who are probably better, right? Better than these older workers, right? They're more innovative, they're more creative, they can improve business. Nope, can't hire them because right? You got to keep all these other workers, right? And you can't fire any of them either. And so you're going to lose the opportunity to hire better workers. And these unions also don't stay silent. They exert influence on government. That's where all their protection comes from. They are protected by law, right? To do their violence and interference and extortion. They can do all these things against their employer, which is kind of crazy, right? So they're using force, coercion to get what they want. Uh, and keep in mind that government unions are the worst because they're the most powerful, right? Because they control not only the purse, right, the taxpayer money, but they also control the writing of the rules to protect their jobs. And so I believe there was a point in time when you weren't allowed to have a union in a government bureaucracy, right? Because it's conflict of interest, but now everyone's unionized, right? As soon as they made it possible, then everyone unioned up. Now, instead of having this monopolistic situation, monopoly of employers and monopolies in the labor, instead of having that kind of situation, you want competition. You want many, many businesses competing against many, many other businesses, uh, fighting over each other for the best possible workers. And in this kind of situation, if you don't like your boss, find another job, right? You find someone who will appreciate you, who won't harass you, who will allow you to sleep on the job. I don't know. You'll find a job, find a boss and a company where the working conditions meet your expectations, right? You don't have to settle for less. You don't have to go on strike, right? You don't have to mobilize and organize and then misallocate your time and energy for something that is a negative on the economy and your company and your own livelihood. No, you don't want to do that. You're going to shop around. You're going to say, oh, okay, I don't like how much I'm being paid here. So I'm just going to look around, see who else is hiring. And if no one else is hiring or no one hires you, then that's a signal to you that you're not that great. Okay. And most people do kind of think that they are better than they actually are. And so, what you would rather do is have people um, fight for better jobs. And how do you fight for a better job? You have to become a better worker. And so when you have competition for labor, not only does it keep businesses honest, right? Because you're always fighting for the best workers, right? And the best workers are not all white. The best workers are not all black or all Asian, whatever. You're looking at the wrong characteristic for the job if you're only looking at skin color, right? You're going to lose. You're not going to survive the competition if you're just hiring based on traits which have nothing to do with the job, right? And so, because you're looking for the best for that job, workers then are going to work harder. They're going to be try to become more attractive to other businesses to be tempted away, to be headhunted away, right? And so, uh, by having competition among businesses fighting over the best workers, you have the workers then trying to be one of those best workers. And so, in order to be a better worker, you need more education, you need more training, you need more skills, whatever. And so, you're not going to try to work less or try to get away with working less, but you're constantly going to try to improve yourself so you can qualify for a better job, higher wages. And so you need that kind of competition among businesses and you need the competition among workers. And it turns out into an honest kind of situation. You have companies who are kept honest, right? Because if they start mistreating their workers, they're going to go to someone else. It keeps workers honest too, because they're always looking to get paid more, right? And so it's a double honest system. I don't know if there's an expression for that, but it keeps everyone playing the game honest. And you may try to cheat the system here or there, but it doesn't work for very long, right? You might cheat an employer or trick an employer to hire you, and it turns out you're not as good as you advertised yourself to be. Well, it becomes the employer's prerogative to let you go, right? for someone who actually is qualified to do the job, right? Which then sends you back to where you came from, or you have to look for more training or skills or whatever that you need. Now, Spartanburg, South Carolina was the example that Friedman used in chapter 8. And he gives an example of how the free market is supposed to work. Now, this town in the 1980s, 70s, had a higher than national average unemployment, right? More people out of work than anywhere else in most other places in the country, national average. And then they had wages that were lower than the national average. So not only did you have high unemployment, but you had low wages too. And so the town was like, man, what are we going to do? So what they decided to do was cut taxes, right? Corporate taxes, right? They just cut it down as much as they could. And what happened was businesses from, right, because it was unusual for this to be, businesses from all over the world started building their corporate headquarters in Spartanburg. And so now you have multiple businesses fighting for the best workers, which means that their wages are going up. And so not only do you solve the unemployment problem, but you also solve the wage problem too. It's not because they unionized that the wages were going up. It was because people were looking for and competing for the best workers. And so the wages naturally went up. It's like Henry Ford all over again. You don't want to lose the workers that you trained already, right? You want to try to keep them. And so to get them to show up on time to work at peak efficiency, you got to pay them more. And then on top of that, then in order to keep your business on top, hiring the best workers, you have to invest a lot of your profit back into your company to improve the equipment that they're using, to improve the research, to figure out how to make your business more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And so it becomes more pleasant for the worker. The worker wants to stay. Even though other people are going to offer them more money, they're like, no, no, this company treats us well, they pay us well, and they're constantly improving our working conditions. So I'm going to stay here, right? And so there are all these factors that come into the decision-making process, but everyone benefits, right? The only people who don't benefit are companies that are going to hire based on race, hire based on some diversity quota system, right? Because they're not hiring on based on the skill set that they need for the company. Other people who also lose out in the free market are lazy workers, right? People who don't improve themselves, people who are always trying to cut corners, people who are just trying to do the bare minimum, right? They're not going to get promoted. They're not going to get the kind of raises that they're hoping, and they can't strike, right? Because it's a free market. You can't coerce someone. You can't extort someone into paying you more. You have to earn it, right? And the greatest thing of all is that there are no union dues in the free market, right? Because there are no unions. You don't need to increase taxes to protect certain corporations, to protect certain unions. You don't need to do any of that. So you don't need added expenses on the public. It's the companies and the workers that are uh, figuring out the best deals for themselves, which turns into lower cost goods for all of the other consumers. And so it's a win all around. And I wish that, uh, Jimmy Dore and a lot of the people that he has subbing for him on his podcast would kind of stop and think about that, right? Like if the wages are stagnant, if you think you're not being treated well, look for a better job. See if you can find someone who is willing to pay you more. And if the answer is no, well, you have one of two choices. Stay at the job that you're at and change your attitude, perhaps even retool your skills, go back to school, learn more skills, be a better employee where you are, learn other aspects of the job, become a manager, perhaps. But that's the thing, you have to work harder. So competition is the name of the game. And in order to have that competition, you need freedom, unrestricted freedom, right? And so now in a free society, you become responsible for the choices that you make. That is the protection of the worker, not this expensive, uh, regressive, uh, lowering the quality, lowering productivity of businesses, attitude of paternalistic government interference. No, no, we just need freedom. And if you put the responsibility of looking for a job or even working harder on the individual, yeah, they're going to come around. They're going to eventually see that, oh man, I got to be serious. I got to work hard if I want to get somewhere, if I want to make more money, right? And that's what you want. You want people always seeking the best, working their best, uh, even if they're not the direct beneficiaries of that hard work, society as a whole benefits. I mean, think about it. It's if all businesses worked at peak efficiency, all the prices of all the goods would go down, right? And everyone benefits from that. And so that's the kind of society that you began to see in Spartanburg, South Carolina in 1980. I think it's a lot different today, but that's the thing, right? You want to keep it free. The longer you keep it free, the longer you can maintain these idyllic and ideal conditions. And people will figure out what is the best solution for anything that comes up. And I got to tell you, in that whole process, war is never a thought that ever occurs to anyone. Violence, no, that's not where the answers lie. It's about voluntary cooperation. It's about thinking, self-improvement, working hard, freedom, right? That's where it's at. And that's all I got for this episode. I will talk to you next time.